everyone, it's Jackie at Spare Room Studio. Today I'm going to colour in Camilla Derwent's Pop Manga Cute and Creepy colouring book. And the other day I started this page and I ran out of steam. I started to glue some things on and stickers and so on, and I ran out of steam a little bit. But I'm going to do this page and I hope to sort of do it in corresponding colours. And I don't like the background here, it's very boring. I don't want to colour that. And I'm not a fan of these big simple sort of shapes in the middle of the page with nothing around them. That's not really my thing. But what I thought I might do is bring in some other characters from the book. So this particular page here, I like these little, I don't know, what are they? Demon imps or something. I don't know what they are, but I particularly like these little characters, so I thought I might put a couple of those around this guy following him. So they're following the Grim Reaper, and I'll do some corresponding colours to here. And I'm hoping to use watercolour pencils, maybe Derwent graphite pencils and Inktense and so on. So I hope the colour on here is okay for you all, and the light and so on. We'll see how we go. I'll get started and then we'll carry on. So what I did was I took a photo of those characters, and I've got my iPad here with that the photos on, and I'm just going to sketch a couple of those characters into this page as well, because I just really like them. I think they're a lot of fun, so I'm just going to put a couple of those in with this guy, and I think I'll put one down here. So let's just start off roughly, and I thought you might actually like to see me drawing, so yet you know that I am actually drawing it and I'm not just tracing and transferring it, which is okay if you want to do that with your books. If you're not confident with your drawing skills, you can actually trace the image and then transfer it onto your page and do it that way. So I'm just going to draw it a bit roughly to start with, and then we'll use a pen later to ink it in. And I'm going to leave this background here for now and just sort of colour over it. And if it becomes to the point where it's distracting or I don't like it or whatever, I can always try some acrylic paint or something later on if I feel like it's needed. So just bear with me while I draw some of these in. I'm going to be a little bit distracted, so I'm just sort of looking at the picture and then transposing it. I'm obviously never going to be as good as Camilla is, but I'm just using her little characters here to get started. I haven't got the same proportions as hers, so they're going to look different. And I've got the placement different and so on, but that's okay. I don't think that Camilla's going to get on the phone and tell me off for ruining her book. So I hope you don't hear too much outside noise today, because as is usual, as soon as I've decided to record, or it's convenient for me to record, I saw that my neighbour was starting to get his whippersnipper, and I'm going to do that like it's coming in on the page, his whippersnipper and his lawnmower and stuff out. So it really is typical luck for me, but I've just got to go with it. We don't always have the time to wait because if he messes around and then it starts getting later and then I run out of time, and it's just very frustrating. So let's have a look how this is looking. So this guy here, you know, it's not the same as Camilla's, but it's just not going to be the same as hers. So, but it's a little character, so at least this is not quite so bare. And I'm going to put one behind him here, and he's got different ears, this one, and that's his little horn there. And they've got great big huge mouths, big sort of grins that are a little bit spooky sort of grins, and really little eyes that are quite far apart. And then it's got quite tubby little body there and little feet. And his wings are coming up quite high. I've made him look like he's just got one horn there, so let's just erase that. And I'm going to make his ear smaller as well. So let's put his ear there smaller, and that can be the horn. And then there you go. See, my drawing skills are a little bit rusty. I'm sorry if Hamish knocks the camera at all. He's under the table at the moment, so. Okay. So let's just do another one more. I like to sort of keep it to an odd number. And he's going to have a different shape face again. Have these funny little horns that Camilla has given them, so I'll just keep that going. And this guy's got a really big long mouth like that, and a bit of a tongue going there, and he's got laughing eyes. I've got completely different proportions to what Camilla has, but hey ho. So I'm just going to do that, I think. And I might leave it like Camilla does. Some of her drawings don't have heavy black inked lines. She leaves some that look like pencil lines. So I think that I might actually leave mine as pencil lines as well. And I'm not going to ink over them. But what I will do is I'll just erase anything that looks really, really bad. Like I did some here that were kind of tentative. So if I just make those look a little bit more intentional. And that will probably do, I think. for starters anyway. Just a thought while I was doing that. I know that some of you don't know what the outliner pencil in the Derwent Inktense are for. And I'm not sure if that's going to focus on there. Let's see. But it says on there outliner 2400. This is essentially like a graphite pencil. So I could have drawn in with this and then coloured with the Derwent Inktense. It's basically like a drawing pencil, so that if you were doing original artwork, you would use the outliner pencil to draw with as your outline, and then you'd fill it in with your Inktense. So, but I wanted a much lighter HB pencil, so that's what I've gone with there. But I could have used that one. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll get started. I think that will do for now, and if I'm not happy with it at the end, maybe I can add some extra stuff, you know, around it if I feel like it's, you know, I'll just go with this for now. Okay, I'm going to use water brushes to get started. That brush is a little bit furry, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a tip that I know that I like onto a full barrel and then put that one aside for now. Okay, so what I want to do is use the Inktense, and I want to do a similar colour scheme to what I have done there. And my Cute and Creepy book is looking the worst for the wear these days. I've used so much water in it that it's quite damaged, but you know, the books are meant to be used, so I'm okay with that. I could always buy a new one if it bothered me too much. So I'm going to start using, I've got mustard. My writing is starting to wear off. I think it's 1700 mustard. I'm going to use tan, which is 1720, and amber, which is 1710 to get started. And I'm just going to do some background just to get some colour on the background to start with. And this book is very wrinkled and cockled and bent, and you know, it's really starting to show quite a lot of wear and tear. And that's what happens if you want to be experimental and play with your books with different materials and so on. You know, there's a fair chance that you're actually going to do a bit of damage to the paper and the book. They're not actually meant for a lot of water, and some of us just, you know, want to have a go and do various things anyway. I've just had a thought that I haven't got any backing paper behind there. Let me just grab a piece of paper. I apologise if I knocked the table then, but the chair just sort of banged back onto it. So, okay, so we've got some paper under there now. So I'm doing a mixture of letting lots of colour drop onto there for now. I'm going to do some flicking, and I'm going to do various colours with that. So remember, if I really hate what happens here, I can cover it up with acrylic paint at the end if I feel like it. But I basically want it to sort of look grungy, grimy, and worn and weathered. You know, the subject matter is that although he's rather cute for the Grim Reaper, he's the Grim Reaper. You know, the subject is death. I don't think death is meant to look perfect. I mean, you know, in your book, sorry about that, guys, that was Hamish. So I apologise about that. You know, in your book, obviously, you do your own interpretation. And if you wish yours to look perfectly rendered, then that's okay. You know, go with it. We're all entitled to interpret our books however we wish. We've paid our money for the book. Most artists, I would think, would be happy to see you using the books and actually embracing your creativity and doing your own thing in there. I don't think that anybody would be too concerned, you know, if you've altered the book or changed anything, or basically interpreted the picture in a way that the artist wasn't thinking themselves. Because, I mean, to be blunt, the name of the game is to sell books. And once you've paid your money over to purchase the book, it is entirely yours to colour, cut up, alter, you know, whatever you want to do with it, it's entirely up to you. Okay, another thing I've forgotten is paper towel. And luckily that is off to my side, so that wasn't too hard to get hold of. So some of my pencils here are getting a bit drippy in my hand. Now I want to start bringing in some of the greens that I used over on the other page as well. So I've got Spring Green 1550 and Light Olive 1540. And I'm going to start bringing in some of those. Now generally I would say to you, don't hold your wet pencils over the picture like this while you're dripping lots of water about and so on. But I'm not going to be too precious with this page, so you know, I'm not being really careful the way that I do this. And I know that it probably horrifies some people to see me work this way, but you know, I want that slightly grungy, messy, crazy sort of look. That's what I'm going for. And the reason I'm doing this is when I'm flicking the colours like this, they're blending in a way in the wet paper there that I can't really create any other way. You know, I can blend colours on the paper and you know, put washes down, but I can't get those little flicks of colour and get them all blending together like they are when I do this sort of thing. That's completely random. You've got no control over it, or very little control over it. And you just can't create that randomness by hand when you're working with a brush like this. You know, you start to become a bit too precise for it. So that's why I like to sometimes blend the colours that way. And sometimes I'll do paint splatters at the end as an effect at the end over the top of the dry paper, and that's going to give a completely different look again. That's going to look more like what is happening over on this side. But at the moment, when you flick it into wet paper like this, it's going to continue to blend and blend into each other until they dry. So if I start doing it over this side, I'm going to get very different paint splatters because the paper was dry, and now it's quite wet again. It's going to be a combination of the two. Now these are Derwent Inktense pencils, so once they dry, they shouldn't move and blend any further. So if you have somewhere that you don't want that colour to be, make sure you get rid of it before it dries, because once it is dry, it's going to stay there. Now some areas I'm going to want to be more of a solid blend. Sorry, I'm a bit off the screen there. So down here I'm doing it more like a solid blend of colour, because I just want variety. I don't want it all to be the same. And yeah, I just want some variety and different looks. And it's still quite pale at this stage. And once I'm quite happy with the colour scheme, I can come back and darken and strengthen some areas up and play some areas up more than others. So I might leave that to all dry together. And see how that dries. A little bit of that darker colour here. So I'm going to leave those pencils out so I can remember what I've used. I've used some red on that other page there, so I'm going to do the same thing again. And I think, if I remember rightly, I used cherry. So I'm going to do some flicks of the red. And I might make the critters here some different colours. So I'm going to put some red down to get this one started. And you can see just how wet I've got this. And I'm going to have areas where I've got it more diluted than others, and then I want some areas where the colour is stronger than others. With that red, I'm going to add, I think it's called Shiraz. Yeah, so the red that I'm using is Cherry 0510, and I'm adding Shiraz, which is 0600. So I'm going to add some Shiraz in there. It's a lovely deep, almost burgundy red. And I can always keep coming back and adding extra colour as I go with this. So I'm being quite loose, and potentially you could describe it as sloppy, I guess. until I get all the colours in where I want them, and then I'm going to either use more Inktense, or I can use coloured pencil or something else to come back later and bring in some nice sharp crisp detail. And I might, you know, bring in some gel pens or acrylic paint pens or paint markers or something different, just for some texture and variety. Once all these colours are on, I can see, you know, what I think after that point. Okay, so if I do some areas where there's a bit of this sort of in the background, it might also imply that there's more of these creatures, you know, in the background somewhere. And I might start his robe in this colour, and then I might bring in some brown later. So Inktense doesn't need to be, and I'm seeing bits of background that I've missed there as well. Inktense doesn't need to be really strong and vibrant if you don't want it to be. If you work with damp paper and then pick up colour off of the tip of the pencil and then bring it back into the paper, you have the ability to make it as bright and vibrant or muted as you would like. You can, of course, colour directly onto the paper and start lightly and build it up that way on the paper as well, but I just don't like the way that looks, the way that I do it. It could be my technique that's, you know, at fault there, but I just don't like the way it looks when I work with it that way. Occasionally I'll do small areas where, when the paper's wet like that, sometimes I'll actually use the pencil on the damp paper like that. You have to make sure that the pencil does not have a sharp point. It has to have a blunt tip to be able to do that. And sometimes I'll work with it that way, and that will give me a very solid, deep, vibrant colour working that way, and it's more blended. But when I work with it, the pencil onto dry paper and then try to dilute it, I feel like I never fully get rid of all the pencil lines, and I don't like that look. Like, that's not a look that I prefer myself. And I'm not saying that other people can't do it and that their work is lacking if they do it, because I see people work that way quite a bit and they have beautiful images at the end of it. But it's very much my personal preference to not work that way. So if I want that super vibrant, deep saturated colour with them, I'll work this way, where I'll wet the paper first, and then I might work with the pencil directly into that area, and then I activate it, so that when I come back later, if I put water over this, it will still move a little bit because there's just so much pigment on the paper there, but it's not going to move as much as if it had never been activated at all. So I like to work with a combination of techniques. I don't want the page to look too regular and samey, for want of a better word. Not great English, I know, but I think you understand what I'm getting at. And you can see how vibrant that is when it's working on the damp paper there. But your pencil tip must be blunt. You can't do this if you've got any kind of point or sharpness to your pencil. It will just tear right through the paper. And even now I've got to be careful, and it will go through. Look, it is already going through to that page. I don't think I'll ever colour this page, so I'm not particularly bothered by that. So please bear in mind that if you use the pencils this way, like I'm demonstrating, where you colour onto damp paper with the pencil and then re-dilute it and have it very, very deep and dark, and you've got lots of water, it will go through, without a doubt. And if it doesn't, then that is really a very, very welcome surprise, because I expect it to bleed through. That's generally what I have in my mind, is that it will bleed through, and if it doesn't, then that's just a bonus. So always check that the picture on the back is one that you're willing to sacrifice before you do anything as vibrant and dark and wet as what I'm doing to the paper here. And if you don't wish to sacrifice that image, then I'd suggest that you see if you can get the image copied onto, you know, a cardstock or a watercolour paper or something else that you can have a go with these techniques. Watercolour paper obviously would be the best, and then you're not going to sacrifice your book. So my goal with this book is I would like to colour the majority of the images in the book. There are a couple that I'm really not interested in, and I'm happy to sacrifice if the page on the other side is one that I'd like to do something like this or something different with. I can live with that. But there's not that many in here that I don't like. I'll try and finish as much of the book as I can, I think. I've got quite a few done already, and the book, the glue binding is not coping with the water that I put on my books, so it's starting to fall apart. But if I you know, was to be brutally honest, I don't think that Cute and Creepy is actually my favourite book by Camilla. So, you know, I've got that attitude, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you can't experiment and try these things in a book that, you know, you're not so precious about, then, you know, you're not going to do it anywhere, basically. Okay, so I might leave that for now, but what I might do with it is let's bring back some of those tan and amber and mustard, and I'm going to bring some of that into this robe as well. So that is the mustard, which I'm going to put towards the top. And then tan, I'm going to use a bit lower down. And I'm also going to bring some brown into this robe as well. I'm sorry, my tummy, if you can hear it, I had some lunch before, and my tummy's going a bit crazy now. So I might use a little bit of mustard on this guy as well. Do his horns in that colour. when it comes to the brown for the robe, I want a darker sort of cooler brown, so I'm going to go for bark. Bark is 2000. And I'm just going with Camilla's hash or hatch marks here, scribbled. As I mentioned, the pictures look like, some of the pictures look like they're just sketchbook drawings done in pencil, so they're not dark printed ink. So I'm just going to cover up some of those lines where she's done some hatching and scribble to indicate some texture and some shadows. Perhaps I'm going to darken up those with the bark. And I'm going to do one of these little guys in bark. And I might bring in a little bit of the tan as well. And I think what I'll do is bring in a lot of texture with coloured pencils, because I've done a lot on that other page there to make it very textured. So I think I would like this page to match. So that's the tan. And that's the bark. So I've got a bit of both of those. Just start darkening that up a little bit more. And then I need to wait until it's dry to get a good indication of how deep the colours are going to be when they've dried, to decide then what I'm going to go from, where I'm going to go from that point. But definitely it's going to need some pencil for some texture, I think. The other page I used some acrylic paint markers as well, so I might need to bring some of that in there. This little guy down here, I might use the greens for him. So the spring green and the light olive that I used on the background, I'm going to use some of that on him. And then they will need to be used much more vibrant and bold, so that he stands out from the background, of course, but that will come as time goes on. We'll build that up. So that's the light olive that I'm using there for some darker areas. Now you might not be able to see my original pencil drawing too well, so you're probably wondering what on earth I'm doing, but yeah, it should all become apparent as the drawing progresses. So you can see just how vibrant that colour is when you use it on damp paper. So I'm just trying to show you a few different techniques that you can use your Inktense pencil. I'm going to try and leave a little bit of a highlight for the edges of the wings to show. Against the background there. So I'm just going to fill in some of the background here that I missed, just so that I've got that colour there and I know what I'm doing and I don't get tripped up, you know, getting confused about what is what. Okay, it's very wet and it has bled through quite a bit, but hopefully you're getting to see, you know, firsthand that if you experiment, this is what can happen, and it's yet to be seen whether the experiment works or not, but you know, we'll know in a short time. And I'm going to do some of that over into that next page as well. I'm going to do that as an undertone. And I'm looking for a grey. I'm going to go with Payne's grey. Payne's grey is 2110. And it's a lovely, lovely grey, Payne's grey. It's almost got a touch of blue and a touch of purple about it. Quite dramatic. And it's a great colour for shadows. So that's what I'm going to use it for here. I'm going to bring some of that down into the shadowed area of the robe. Now remember, I like to save black for the most dramatic areas that need black. So I'll try to get as dark as I can with all my other colours first before I decide to bring in black. Now he almost looks like he's got proper eyes, the way that Camilla has drawn these. It's unusual for a skull. And this is all very wet now. I need to probably take a break and dry it off, and I might even have to iron this flat. I do find when I use the hairdryer though that it does make it wrinkle and cockle up a lot more than what it does if it dries naturally. So I'm just going to use some of that down there in that shadow, because if it doesn't dilute properly, that area's got a lot of texture what Camilla has already drawn in there anyway, so but it is diluting quite well anyway. It's onto damp paper, so and you can see how that has continued to keep blending into each other, so all those individual paint splatters are no longer that obvious because it's all blending as it's drying. Okay, so the other side has got a lot more yellow and mustard in it, but I can bring that in with the coloured pencils as I go. Just trying to think of what else I might need to do here before I let it dry. So let's use bark to do the inside of his mouth where his mouth is open. Now you may not have seen some of my other videos, but I have mentioned before that, sorry, Hamish is moving again, that if you use a brush and you hold it further back down the barrel, it forces you to do much looser brush strokes and be much more less controlled and loose with your mark making, so it forces you to do that. You know, it's hard to do otherwise. So if you want to relax your style a little bit, have a go at doing that. And you can see now that as I'm lifting the paint from the pencil, the Inktense from the pencil, it's quite vibrant and strong because it's there's not a lot of water, so it's not diluting that colour, and we're getting a very strong, vibrant effect now. So, you know, experiment with that, experiment with levels of water. See what effect you get when you change the consistency of, you know, how much water you're using versus how much pigment. And I'm just going to put a little bit of colour onto the skull. So I'm going to use the mustard. Because what I've done on the other side is I've inferred that the bone is dirty and grimy. It's not a clean bone that has been bleached by the sun or carefully stripped of the flesh. It's you know, it looks like it's come out of the soil, or it's dirty or grungy or whatever. So let's add a little bit of tan in there as well, up here. And you can use that, you know, like you can use your brush on the dry paper and not have your brush too wet, and you're going to get the dry brushing effect is quite textured, and it will skip over the different lumps and bumps in the paper, and it will give you a really different sort of effect again as well. Now the handle of his, what is this called? A scythe? Is that how you pronounce it? I'll use a grey for that. And I'll go with a neutral grey, which is 2120. And I'm just looking to put a bit of colour on it at the moment, but not necessarily define anything. And pencil can be used for that, I think. Maybe this guy can have a grey horn. And this one down here. I've gone over the top of his head there, so I'm just going to blend that in a bit. So, let's just have a look at how that's going. So you can see the page is very wet. So you can see all the splatters that have gone over his skull. Just trying to get the light right there for you. So you can still see that pattern underneath, but it's become more indistinct now. And here's my little critters. So I still haven't got any background around him. And you can see, hopefully, how solid that area in there is. How saturated I've done that. Now I will show you the back. It's upside down because it's the easiest way for me to bring it up to the camera. That is an awful lot of bleed through there. It will lighten off a little bit. But you can see how wet. That is very about to tear sort of wet. Okay, so let's bring that back down. I've got lots of bits of paper and what have you in this book, so there you go. That's how it's looking. I'm going to let that dry and I'm going to come back and do part 2 with you, and I'll decide, you know, how much more I need to do in terms of deepening up the background and work with some coloured pencils, I think. Or I may even do the Inktense again, I'm not sure, but we'll see when I come back. So that's it for part 1. Thank you for being with me, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye now.